This is not worth $50. When you take into account the material cost, production cost, distribution cost, and the 29 micrograms of cocaine that are on the average bill, this is actually only worth about 10 cents. So then why is it worth 500 times more than its physical value? First of all, this bill is not made of paper, it's actually made of plastic, specifically a material called polypropylene. Second of all, this bill, also known as a banknote, has intrinsic value, meaning that its actual value is only worth as much as you perceive it to be worth. So if you perceive that this is actually worth $1 million, then it's actually worth $1 million in intrinsic value to you. The trouble is that it's not worth $1 million to people like the bank. But it wasn't always the intrinsic value that determined the worth of a banknote, because banknotes were originally promises given out by banks to customers that pretty much said, we will give you this amount of silver or gold by this date. But after realizing that this is much more convenient to carry around and cheaper to make than this, the banknotes eventually became a mainstay in our modern world. Every nation makes its own kind of banknotes with different kinds of symbols on them. For example, America has presidents and monumental structures like the White House on its bills, which is what most nations do. But then there's nations like mine, Canada, that have some kids playing hockey and some astronauts in space on our $5 bill. But this $5 Canadian bill is not worth $5 everywhere. For example, right now this $5 bill is worth $4.30 in America, about 2 3/4 pounds in Britain, and 116,000 rial in Iran. So why are certain banknotes worth more in different parts of the world? Well, this is because of inflation, which is defined as the erosion of the real value of a local currency. It occurs when there is an increase in the volume of money in an economy, which dilutes the value of each individual banknote. And because each banknote decreases in value, prices for everything like food, shelter, and more importantly, Pokemon cards will rise to try and compensate for this decrease in value. Over the years, there's been a steady increase in the volume of money around the world. This is why your grandparents were able to buy a shirt for $1 and why you have to pay about 30 bucks. Which is a total ripoff, by the way. Shirts don't cost $30 to make. So have there been any extreme cases of inflation? That's also called hyperinflation, by the way. Well, would you consider a loaf of bread being worth $10 billion in Zimbabwe as inflated? And I would say yes. Yes, it would be. And this actually happened in 2008. But that's not even the most extreme case of hyperinflation. For example, there was a time in—
Hey, Jack, would you mind if I told this story?
Oh, hey, Matt. Sure. Yeah, I'll just go, read a book or something. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I guess this was your channel and everything. That's awkward. In the entire history of the world, there have been 45 documented cases of hyperinflation, the worst of which experienced by Hungary in 1946. Before World War II, Hungary's currency, the pengu, was worth about 20% of the American dollar. That was about to change. To stimulate its economy after World War II, Hungary rapidly created a ton of money. And this didn't exactly go according to plan because the pengu soon became the most devalued currency throughout history. By July of 1946, something that had cost 379 pengu in January of 45 would now cost 1 septillion pengu. I don't have enough fingers on my hands to show you how many zeros are after that one. The inflation rate during this period was 13 quadrillion %, meaning that prices for goods doubled every 15 hours. The inflation got so bad that the government had to start issuing $100 quadrillion banknotes. And to put this in perspective, if you combined all of the banknotes issued by the government in that period, they were still only 1/10 the value of the American penny. Jack, I remember learning stories about German children in a time of hyperinflation combining banknotes they had to make a soccer ball because that was cheaper than actually buying a soccer ball. And by that logic, I feel like Hungarians should have just made a house out of their banknotes or something. I don't even know. Well, that was what I had to say. And on that banknote, back to you, Jack.
Yeah, Magikarp's definitely the best Pokemon. I should probably get another one. Oh, hey, you're back. I was just, yeah. I was thinking, what if we stacked all of the coins on Earth? How high would that be? Well, the first thing we're gonna have to do is get a good estimation of how many coins are actually out there in the world. Only about 1% of the total value of all of the physical money on Earth comes from coins. The rest come from banknotes. And physical money only represents 7% of the money on Earth. So that would mean that coins only take up 0.07% of the total value of the money on Earth. But they do take up 90% of the mass of all of the cash on Earth. This is because the average banknote has a mass of less than 1 gram, while the average coin has a mass of over 7 grams. If you were to measure the mass of all of the estimated 2 trillion coins ever produced on Earth, then the mass of all the spare change would equate to 1.4 billion kilograms, or about the same as 11 CN Towers in Toronto. The average coin also has a thickness of 2 millimeters, so a theoretical stack of all of the coins on Earth would be about 4 million kilometers high, the same length as 3 diameters of the sun. And if you were to lay out these coins from end to end, which have an average diameter of 22 millimeters, then they would be 44 million kilometers in length, which is a little less than the distance between Mercury and the sun. That's all for now, folks. Make sure to check out Matt's channel, Conjecture, right here, and remember to leave a like and subscribe if you like this channel too. Thank you for watching.